Can we eat him too?
Over decades, Tolkien has woven legendary tales of chaos and peace. His finest writings to exist have been expressed through books, movies, and now a TV show. In this marvelous video, we're going to sing some praise about his wonderfully written characters. Most are lionhearts, while others are true agents of chaos. In all the races of men, dwarves, hobbits, elves and orcs, some were blinded by their lust for power, while others remained stubbornly untainted. Love and loss, purity and passion, myth and memory, all of which makes Tolkien's beings compelling. So without further ado, let's dive right in and count down the most powerful ones from all corners of Arda. We'll begin with the beings that came before the creation of the world. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Eru Ilúvatar. Eru Ilúvatar transcended all mortal realms and was often referred to as the One in writings other than the Silmarillion, the one who imbued life and light in all living beings that walked the world. As the supreme deity, Eru first created the Ainur, or the Holy Ones. They came to be known as the offspring of his thought. Eru kindled the Ainur from the flame imperishable, and each one of them represented one part of his mind. Together, they began creating Arda through the Ainulindale, also known as the music of the Ainur. With delicately composed harmonies, Eru actualized his visions for the universe. Once Ea, the world and all that is, came into existence, the greatest of the Ainur had to oversee the intricacies of the continents. These Ainur would go on to become the Valar, who were accompanied by the Maiar, the lesser of their kind. Ilúvatar was responsible for the awakening of the elves in Cuiviénen, which occurred around 450 years before the first rising of the sun. But as this sun rose, so did the race of men. Keep in mind that the Ainur played a significant role in the shaping of Arda. After his vision was fulfilled, Eru hardly intervened in the comings and goings of the universe. One such rare occurrence was when Ilúvatar resurrected Gandalf the Grey as the White Wizard. So, as far as powerful beings go, Eru Ilúvatar is undeniably the most powerful, an omnipotent and omnipresent creator of the universe. Varda. Varda was part of an order known as the Adatar, or the Eight. These made up the council that rules the Valar. Varda was the luminescent queen of the Valar with Arda's stars under her care. Varda was said to be the most radiant and beautiful Valar, who glowed with Ilúvatar's light. But beyond her beauty, Varda was always a step ahead of the rest, as she had sensed Melkor's impending betrayal even before he'd thought of it. The Dark Lord always feared the Queen of the Stars, as she seemed to know his mind better than he himself did. When the Valar arrived on Arda, Varda was present to make the two lamps, and she imbued them with light. Once the two trees of Valinor were sung into existence, Varda created her wells, which were specially made to hold the light that fell from the trees. With this collected dew, Varda wove new constellations to welcome the awakening of the elves, which took place under the ethereal light of the stars. Queen Varda blessed and made the Silmarils the divine jewels we presently know them as. The elves of Middle-earth wholly revered Varda, considering her to be the most powerful Valar to exist. They worshipped her as their goddess, Elbereth, and prayed to the stars in their time of need. She even aided little Sam in his fight against the monstrous Shelob. As an embodiment of light itself, Queen Varda's sheer power only comes second to Eru Ilúvatar and Melkor. Manwë. As the king of the Valar, Manwë was Varda's husband. He was also Melkor's brother and the High King of Arda. Manwë was also known to be Ilúvatar's favorite Ainu, who established control over the wind and air of the universe. Manwë was said to be the most powerful in terms of authority, more than ability. The Vale of Arda, which was the world's atmosphere, was established by the Elder King. After the two lamps of Arda were constructed as the ruler of the land, Manwë hallowed the two lamps while his wife filled them with light. Still, he was unable to retaliate against Morgoth's furious assaults, and was forced to retreat to Aman. Even after Morgoth was eventually captured, chained, and imprisoned, he was ultimately granted pardon by Manwë. The essence of evil was alien to the benevolent king, so he could never grasp the true extent of Morgoth's schemes. Morgoth had already sown the seeds of deceit and doubt in the minds of the Noldor, who had already begun hunting the clan of Teleri elves. This prompted Manwë to forbid the Noldor elves from entering Valinor ever again, and even hid the land near the shores of the Undying Lands, across the enchanted shadowy seas. Manwë was most popularly known for devising the Great Eagles, who were sent to Arda to watch over the Noldors in exile. They were also tasked to keep a watch on Morgoth. Melian. Melian was the mother of Luthian and the fourth most potent Maiar to exist. She was the queen of Doriath, who also served the Valar named Vanna and Este. During her time in Lothian, she tended to the trees of Urmo. Melan was recognized by her melodious singing voice akin to a nightingale. During the awakening of the elves, Melan left Valinor and stepped onto Middle-earth to fill the Voidlands with her angelic singing, which would touch the elves on the shore of Cuiviénen. A group of Maiar was also sent forth as guardians of the first elves ever to exist. Hence, Melan eventually became the chief of these Maiar guardians. Her journey to become a queen first began with her fateful encounter with Thingol in the woods of Nan Elmoth. Together, they ruled the land of Doriath, which was protected by Melian's veil. This was a protective enchantment that would send trespassers into a confused haze. The bewildered travelers would then get lost in a maze of trees, usually never to be found again. Melan also used this spell to protect Doriath from Morgoth's conniving eyes. Only Beren and the greatest werewolf Karkaroth were able to pass through this barrier. That aside, the Queen of Doriath forever carried the splendor and power of Valinor with her. Melan's razor-sharp mind was able to foresee the ruin of her kingdom way before Beren's quest for the Silmaril. Luthian, the daughter of Melan and Thingol. Luthian was the bravest Eldarin elf who fought against all odds for her love. Luthian was the great-grandmother of Lord Elrond as well. Luthian was said to be the most beautiful of her kind, who lived blissfully in the kingdom of Doriath. She often danced in the forests to the flute played by her friend Doran, who would come to love her fiercely. But those familiar with Luthian's tale know that this love was unrequited, for before there was Aragon and Arwen, Tolkien's legendarium saw the tragic love story of Beren and Luthian. Beren was a mortal from the house of Beor who stumbled across Luthian frolicking in the woods, and the two soon fell in love. In order to allow his daughter to marry a mortal, King Thingol sent Beren on the risky task of retrieving the Silmaril from Morgoth's Iron Crown. When her beloved was captured by Sauron, Luthian set off on the great wolfhound Huan to rescue him. With the determination of her love, elvish magic, and Mayan roots, Luthian defeated Sauron in all his beastly forms. After confronting the likes of Morgoth and Karkaroth, Luthian was given a choice. She could continue her oblivious existence or live a mortal life, reunited with Beren. We all can guess what she chose. Melkor, Morgoth. We traditionally know Morgoth as the first Dark Lord. But did you also know that he was one of the greatest Ainu to exist? He became the first smudge of darkness to tarnish the holiness of Iluvatar's creations. As the primordial harmonies known as the music of the Ainur were being sung in groups, Iluvatar asked them to join in unity and sing a harmony greater than ever. The music of the Ainur, which played in 3 themes, would result in the creation of Arda. But soon, a jarring discord was heard in the great theme. This was Melkor, who actively defied the will of Iluvatar and sang about themes that clashed with Eru's visions. Melkor, who selfishly desired his own power, sowed the seeds of the first evil to exist. After his fall from glory, Melkor couldn't directly control Arda, so he resorted to other deceitful methods. These involved corrupting many of the Ainur, who turned into ungodly beasts known as the Balrogs. Melkor also kept disrupting the Valar's efforts to shape Arda. In the First Age, Melkor ultimately committed sacrilege by destroying the 2 lamps of Arda, and the flames from these lamps scarred the lands of Middle-earth. He proceeded to build his dark fortress Uvutamno and launched an all-out war against the Valar. He managed to steal the Silmarils and embed them in his crown. A darkened Melkor was referred to as Morgoth, or Dark Enemy and Tyrant in Sindarin. As Melkor, he was the most powerful Ainur who transformed into the Dark Lord Morgoth, with Arda's darkest forces sworn to his loyalty.
Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret a master ring to control all others.
Sauron. In the Elder Days, Sauron was Morgoth's most loyal servant. For Tolkien fans of all ages, Sauron was the most well-known and popular antagonist who had taken countless forms over time. Originally, he was a Maiar named Mairon who was under Aule's apprenticeship. Aule was one of the Adatar who concerned himself with the craftsmanship of rock and metal. Before the years of the trees and the days of the days, Mairon was actually a benevolent being who took great pride in his craft. But soon it became apparent that he was indeed obsessed with perfection. His unshakable need for order overtook his empathy and understanding of Arda's sentient beings. He saw the means to achieve his visions of order through Morgoth's way of being, and was unwittingly seduced over to the dark side. If we were to talk about every sin committed by Sauron against Iluvatar's creations, then we'd be here all day. But to sum it up, he served as Morgoth's chief lieutenant. He led a war against the elves and commanded a whole battalion of Balrogs. He also took over the island of Tol Ngauroth and became the lord of the werewolves. Here, he captured Beren and was overcome by Huan, the Wolfhound. In the Second Age, he established the Dark Land of Mordor and constructed Barad-dûr, where the races of orcs, trolls, and men like the Haradrim and Easterlings all united to worship Sauron as their god-king. Sauron the Deceiver also triggered the fall of Númenor, the War of the Last Alliance, and the War of the Ring much later on. It doesn't get more megalomaniacal than Sauron. Saruman the White. While Gandalf the Grey might have been the wisest wizard, Saruman the White was the most powerful. The wizards of Istari were sent to Middle-earth as emissaries on behalf of the Valar. The Istari were a gang of Maiar specifically sent to counter the evil bred by the Dark Lord Sauron. Before he became one of the Five Guardians, Saruman was known to be a Maiar named Kurumo, who studied alongside Mairon under the great smith Aule. The Valar decided that one of their emissaries would be tasked to unite the men and elves against the dark forces of Sauron. Kurumo wished to go, but Olorin, aka Gandalf, was sent in his place instead. Here was when Kurumo's envy for Olorin began. Upon the Istari's arrival on Middle-earth, Círdan, the master of the Grey Havens, bestowed the Red Ring of Power known as Narya upon Olorin instead of Kurumo. Although Kurumo was the head of the council, Círdan saw Olorin as worthy of wielding the ring. In the Third Age, Saruman settled into his tower of Isengard and dabbled in the Palantiri, which was also the moment when the desire for the One Ring took root in him. As a Maiar who had to embody a man to protect the free people of Middle-earth, Saruman was also susceptible to the human condition of jealousy, greed, and lust for total power. He became Sauron's pet, crossbreeding men and orcs to create armies upon armies of the Uruk-hai. As unfortunate as Saruman's end was with Treebeard besieging Isengard, he was still a force to be reckoned with. His command and control over forces of nature, mastery over magic, along with Sauron's wicked teachings, make Saruman one of the most formidable Istari to exist. Gandalf the Grey was first known by his Quenya name Olorin during his time in Lothian. He was closely associated with the Queen of the Valar, Nienna, who was synonymous with pity and courage, along with grief and sorrow. When Olorin was chosen to keep Sauron in line, he was reluctant to go as he was afraid of the Dark Lord's cruelty. His arrival onto Middle-earth was received warmly, and thus he was knighted as everyone's dear Gandalf the Grey. Gandalf became one of the major driving forces in Tolkien's The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings books. Near the beginning of the Third Age, Gandalf alerted the White Council of reports of activity by the fortress of Dol Guldur. This indeed turned out to be Sauron in his necromancer alias, who fled before Gandalf could come across him. At first glance, Gandalf appeared to be a sweet older man who took a liking to hobbits and often showered overjoyed hobbit children with fireworks and such. He'd go on to assist Thorin and his company, along with their fantastic burglar Bilbo Baggins, on the quest for Erebor. Right before the War of the Ring, Gandalf accompanied ring-bearer Frodo Baggins as part of the Fellowship. How can we forget Gandalf's legendary face-off with the deadliest Balrog, known as Doran's Bane? This moment was an accurate display of Gandalf's sheer strength, mastery over his skill, and loyalty to his purpose that allowed him enough grace to be resurrected by Iluvatar as Gandalf the White. Galadriel. Lady Galadriel oversaw the lands of Lothlorien along with her husband, Celeborn. Galadriel bore the Ring of Adamant, also known as Nenya, which she received in the Second Age. She was initially from Aman as one of the Noldor elves who were exiled to Middle-earth. Right from her youth, Galadriel was said to be an exceptional elf with unmatched physical strength and agility in all of Eldamar. Following the War of the Jewels and War of Wrath, Galadriel and her husband Celeborn moved closer to the kingdom of Aragon following Sauron's re-emergence. He soon came to deceive the Master Smiths of Aragon in his fair form known as Anatar the Sharer of Gifts. But Galadriel wasn't fooled for 1 second. She advised that the 3 elven rings of power should be strictly hidden from Sauron once the One Ring was forged. Near the beginning of the Third Age, Galadriel's daughter, Celebrian, was married to Elrond, who was half-elven. With Doran's Bane, the Balrog's reign of terror, dwarves had fled Khazad-dûm, while the Sylvan elves abandoned Lorien. Galadriel and her husband took over ruling the land as Lord and Lady of Galadrim. But how powerful was Galadriel, really? Tolkien described her as the mightiest and fairest of all elves who remained on Middle-earth. This also referred to her gift of mind-reading and foresight, as she judged the minds of all who passed her realm with kindness and empathy. In earlier texts, Galadriel was said to have studied under Aule and Yavanna, but later it was said that she was the star pupil of all the Valar.
You should have stayed dead.
Elrond. Elrond was a unique character in Tolkien's universe, as he was elven, yet one of the most extraordinary beings to exist. The Lord of Rivendell was the son of Eärendil and Elwing, also the father of Arwen. Elrond was best known for his consistent retaliation against the Dark Age of Sauron throughout the Second and Third Age. He fiercely fought the Dark Lord in the War of the Last Alliance and was given the Sapphire Ring of Vilya by the Elven King Gil-galad. Elrond was present when Isildur sliced the One Ring off Sauron's hand, yet refused to destroy the evil. Following this war, Elrond was given the Shards of Narsil, a blade which he carefully preserved for its worthy wielder in the years to come. He founded the Kingdom of Rivendell after the fall of Aragon at the hands of Annatar, the Deceiver. When Thorin and his company passed through his realm, Lord Elrond helped them decipher the moon letters on Thror's map. During the War of the Ring, he healed Frodo, who was pierced with a Morgul blade. He also presided over the Council of Elrond, which oversaw the Fellowship gathering. All in all, Elrond was an essential part of Tolkien's legendarium. Most of Elrond's elven power came to him from his Mayan ancestor, Luthian. He was revered all across Middle-earth for his unmatched healing abilities, wisdom, and compassion.
Perfection exists only in Valinor.
Thank you, Master Kadan.
Círdan. Círdan the Shipwright was the noblest elf of Sindar to live and came to be known as the Master of the Grey Havens in the Second and Third Ages. He was the bearer of Narya, the Ring of Fire, which he soon gifted to Gandalf the Grey. Círdan was one of many skilled elves who helped build the ships that undertook the great journey from Cuiviénen to Valinor. But he and his people didn't take the journey, as they patiently waited in loyalty for their kin, Thingol, who was rumoured to have disappeared. In the Second Age, Círdan lived in the Grey Havens and ruled the Kingdom of Lindon after the death of Gil-galad during the War of the Last Alliance. Like Galadriel, Círdan was also gifted with the powers of foresight. He often played the role of an advisor and was indispensable to the Teleri elves. In Tolkien's writings, Círdan was recognized as being one of the oldest elves, being a couple of thousand years old. His main power lay in his abilities as a shipwright. The Blue Wizards. Out of the 5 Maiar spirits who were sent to Middle-earth in the form of wizened old men, Alatar and Pallando, were the 2 blue ones. We know that each Valar was usually accompanied by one or more Maiar. The Ionu of Hunt and Forests, named Orome, mentored Alatar and later Pallando. In Tolkien's Unfinished Tales of Númenor and Middle-earth, he described the movements of 2 blue wizards in the east. The Istari were sent to the lands of Middle-earth and tasked with helping the Free Peoples fight off Sauron's reign of terror. However covert it ran. But Tolkien also went on to say that along the way, only one Istari, who was Gandalf, remained loyal to the cause. This might be referring to the Blue Wizards' journey to the east, in which they went along with Saruman to free the Haradrim and Easterlings from Sauron's evil seduction. However, only Saruman returned, and the Blue Wizards were never seen again. They were only briefly mentioned in the Hobbit trilogy. Despite their brief and vague role in the story, the Blue Wizards' Istari were a few of the most powerful beings to walk Middle-earth. The wizards, disguised in the flesh of old men with long white beards, were revered for their boundless wisdom and counsel. Glorfindel. The Lord of the House of the Golden Flower, Glorfindel was a mighty elf with remarkable power in Gondolin. During the exile of the Noldor, Glorfindel loyally followed the House of Fingolfin. He bravely fought in the Battle of Lamoth, where Fingolfin's people were ambushed by orcs during their march toward Beleriand. He also assisted Fingolfin's son Turgon during the War of the Great Jewels that took place in the First Age. As a token of his valor, Glorfindel was made the Lord of the House of the Golden Flower, and he also became the king's captain. Eventually, Maeglin, the treacherous elf, betrayed his people and revealed the location of Gondolin to none other than the Dark Lord Morgoth. This led to the ruin of Gondolin, a battle which took a vast number of Galindrim lives. The noble houses of Gondolin grouped together to protect their city. Most impressive was the moment Glorfindel took on Longorthin, the second Balrog Lord. In a daring fight on the cliffside, Glorfindel expertly avoided the Balrog's blazing claws and more. The Elven Lord pierced the beast as they tumbled off the cliff in a flurry of flames. For this bold act of sacrifice, Glorfindel was sent to Middle-earth as another emissary of the Valar. Balrogs. The Valar were the 7 Maiars who were tragically corrupted by the Dark Lord Morgoth. Remember the dirty tricks Morgoth resorted to in order to rebel against Ilúvatar? One of these was creating his host of Maiar, aka demons born from the fallen spirits of the Maiar. During the siege of Gondolin in the First Age, the Balrogs were said to have ridden atop dragons who raced to destroy the noble city. Perhaps the most infamous Balrog was the one who survived the War of the Wraith and lurked underneath Khazad-dûm. He came to be known as Doran's Bane, who prevented the dwarves from reclaiming their kingdom. In the quest of the One Ring, Gandalf the Grey fought the Flame of Udun to death. The lord of the Balrogs in the First Age was Gothmog, the High Captain of Angbar. He had the blood of 2 Noldorian High Kings on his charred claws. The beastly demon of flame and shadows drove fear in the hearts of the Beleriand elves with his black axe and fiery whip. And Calagon, the Black, the crown jewel of the First Age, and Calagon the Black was the greatest fire-breathing drake to exist. Amongst many dark forces created to mock Ilúvatar's gift of life, Morgoth bred a whole generation of dragons. And Calagon was the descendant of Glaurung, the Gold Worm. As the War of the Wrath neared its end in the First Age, the host of the Valinor launched a brutal assault against Morgoth's armies. But he had one trick hidden up his sleeve as the Dark Lord unleashed his final line of defense. The mountaintops of Thangorodrim thundered as a whole barrage of winged beasts soared out, led by Ancalagon the Black. He was a fearsome sight to behold. With wings that cast great shadows on the lands, Angolian drove back the armies of the Valar. Their arrival turned into an assault of the elements with a flashing lightning storm and rows of flames. But as the Eagles of Manwë bore down on Angolian and his evil forces, Eärendil, the father of Elrond, finally struck down the great beast. When Angolian fell atop Thangorodrim, it was said that the peaks were reduced to rubble. As far as fire drakes go in Tolkien's legendarium, Angolian the Black was the mightiest to live. Smaug. All the free peoples of Middle-earth, whether dwarf, hobbit or elf, were wary of Smaug, the Defiler. He was the greatest dragon to live in the Third Age. Smaug was a fire drake from the north, who was drawn to the piles of treasure in the prosperous dwarven kingdom of Erebor. Smaug's arrival was marked by a hurricane of wind and flames that wreaked havoc on the neighboring kingdoms of Dale, the city of men. Upon seizing the kingdom under the mountain, Smaug remained there for nearly 2 centuries as he slumbered on top of mountains of gold. Once the quest of Erebor was embarked upon, Thorin Oakenshield and his company, along with their burglar Bilbo Baggins, set off to reclaim their home. While Bilbo and Smaug's jesting was entertaining to read or watch, this didn't stop the dragon from unleashing his wrath on Lake Town. But every foe has a chink in his armor, and for Smaug, this was located under a missing scale near his heart. The to-be king of Dale, Bard the Bowman, killed the beast with a great black arrow. Ungoliant. Most of us are familiar with Shelob, the great spider who preyed on the passers-by in Mordor. But there existed her even deadlier ancestor, Ungoliant, the primordial arachnid. Ungoliant was Morgoth's partner in crime, and also the first ever spider to take shape on Arda. She existed in darkness before the Valar shone their light down on the lands. Some also believed that she was a fallen spirit who fled from the Valar into the depths of Mount Hyarmentir. Here, she evolved into a monstrous spider and fed off of light, growing to a gigantic size. In Morgoth's darkening of Valinor, Ungoliant accompanied him in draining the sap of the 2 trees and emptying the wells of Varda. But feeding on this light made her so large and frenzied with power that even Morgoth feared what she might do next. She went as far as to demand the Silmarils from Morgoth and attacked him when he refused. Aragon, Elessar. The great warrior who went by Strider in the Third Age still strove to protect the free peoples of Middle-earth. But this mysterious stranger was actually Aragon, son of Arathon and the descendant of Isildur and Elendil. After his father's demise, a young Aragon was fostered by Elrond and was referred to as Elessar, which was the namesake of an elf stone brought to Middle-earth from Valinor by Gandalf. As one of the Dunedain, Aragon had begun protecting the Shire even before the quest of the One Ring began. He was a crucial member of the Fellowship, leading the hobbits and the others to safety in the face of Gandalf's demise in Moria. Aragon was a lethal warrior thanks to his 90 years' worth of practice to back him up. But his most impressive feat was rallying the scattered men of the West, reviving their courage and morale in their collective fight against Sauron's armies. For Frodo. Frodo. Alright, just hear this out. Frodo Baggins possessed a strength which would be considered a rare trait in any other character on this list. Frodo Baggins was Bilbo's nephew who inherited the One Ring in the Third Age. Up until then, Frodo led a blissful existence in his little hamlet of the Shire, unaware of their threatened peace. Frodo was unlike his kin of usual, self-preserved hobbits. His unabashed courage made him a worthy ring-bearer who was seemingly immune to the ring's seduction. The ring took a heavy toll on him, but Frodo persevered with his inner strength. Even so, during the quest of the One Ring, Frodo was plagued with self-doubt and unimaginable obstacles in a world suddenly possessed by darkness. In the end, Frodo finally cracked under the pressure in the heart of Mount Doom, but this can never be considered a moral failure, as said in Tolkien's letter 246. Frodo's will and resilience to the ring's temptation was his strongest feat. He never chased glory, fame, or unparalleled power. The Witch King of Angmar. The Lord of the Ringwraiths, or Nazgul, was Sauron's most loyal servant in the Second and Third Ages. The 9 rings of power that were given to mortal men destined to die birthed the Nazgul. It was believed that the Witch King was one out of 3 noble Númenórean lords who turned into these ghastly wraiths. Before his defeat in the Battle of Fornost, the Witch King had managed to bring down nearly all the realms of Arnor and even Eriador in the north before he fled to Mordor. The Ringwraiths strove endlessly to restore their master's former strength. The Witch King also seized the Gondorious fortress of Minas Ithil and renamed it Minas Morgul, or the Tower of Sorcery. During the quest for the ring, the Witch King stabbed Frodo with a Morgul blade by Weathertop. As the commander of Sauron's armies in the Third Age, the Witch King held immeasurable power while being bound to the Dark Lord. He met his end in the greatest battle of the Third Age on Pelennor Fields by the hands of Éowyn and the bravery of Merry. Radagast the Brown. As a Maya, Radagast was known as Iwendil and served the Queen of the Earth, Yavanna. As one of the 5 emissaries sent by the Valar to protect against the will of Sauron, Iwendil was named Radagast the Brown by the Noldor. He was the tender of beasts, roaming the forests of Middle-earth more than interfering in the worldly affairs of men and elves. Radagast chose to live near Western Mirkwood, a point from which he could see the growing shadow in Dol Guldur. Way before the War of the Ring, Saruman set off in search of the One Ring in Gladden Fields. Radagast was clueless about Saruman's true intentions and helped the White Wizards look for the ring, enlisting the help of his little critter friends. In the Hobbit trilogy, we see Radagast dabble in dark sorcery, but it's only to cleanse a dying creature. It was also said that Radagast was capable of potent illusory magic. Whether this alluded to actual sorcery or growing hypnotic plants was not confirmed. Tom Bombadil. We know for a fact that in Season 2 of Amazon's Rings of Power, none other than Tom Bombadil will provide refuge to the stranger. This jovial being was said to be the most powerful in all of Middle-earth. In the book, Tom claims that he was here before the river and the trees, which can mean that he was here before the arrival of the Valar and was the first living creature to exist on Arda. From what we know of this mysterious primordial character, Tom Bombadil lived east of Buckland in the Old Forest with his wife, Goldberry. When Frodo and his company of hobbits stay with Tom during the quest of the One Ring, it's revealed that wearing the ring has no effect on Tom. He didn't even turn invisible. When Frodo was captured by the Barrow-wights, he sang a melody taught by Tom as a cry for help. Despite being ancient, Bombadil was a whimsical fellow who only concerned himself with his realm near Buckland instead of the comings and goings of war. Prince Doran. The first dwarf to awaken in Middle-earth was Doran the First, who came to be known as Doran the Deathless due to the longevity of his life. Doran the Deathless was the mightiest of his kind, created by Aule. The dwarves were meant to sleep beneath the earth. Doran was part of a prophecy which claimed that he would be reincarnated and return to Middle-earth after his inevitable demise. Doran's folk devoutly believed in the concept of reincarnation. Thus, Prince Doran IV was considered to be a reincarnation of Doran the Deathless. But the prophecy also claimed that the line of Doran would dwindle after the 7th reincarnation. Doran IV was shown to be an eccentric dwarven prince in the Rings of Power. He reconnected, somewhat grudgingly, with his old friend, Elrond. Doran IV can be considered just as powerful as his ancestor, Doran the Deathless, especially the moment when he displayed his true strength and challenged Elrond in a ceremonial stone-breaking contest. Beorn. In The Hobbit, Beorn was described as a fearsome skin changer who often transformed into a great black bear. Although his origins were hazy, Beorn hated orc and goblin folk with a vengeance. This suggested that his people might have been chained, captured, and exploited for various purposes. Beorn spent his days in Beorn Hall, which was located right between the Misty Mountains and Mirkwood. During Erebor's quest, Thorin and his company are hilariously introduced to Beorn one after the other by Gandalf, so as not to startle the skin changer. In the Battle of the Five Armies, Beorn saved Thorin from being killed by the orc named Bolg. After the war, Beorn was made a great chief near the Vales of Anduin. All his descendants came to be known as Beornings, who also skin-changed into bears.
The eagles are coming!
Eagles of Manwë. The great eagles were the sentient winged messengers of King Manwë. Like the Istari, the eagles of Manwë were sent from Valinor onto Middle-earth to watch over its free peoples, the Noldor and the evil of Morgoth. Thorondor was the king of eagles and the greatest bird to exist. Thorondor aided Fingon in his rescue of Maedhros. He was also made the guardian of Gondolin and fiercely fought Ancalagon the Black during the War of Wrath. Thorondor's descendant Gwaihir was the Lord of the Eagles in the Third Age. Gwaihir and his brother Landrovel rescued Beren and Luthian from the dark fortress of Angbar. Gwaihir endlessly aided Gandalf throughout the Third Age. He rescued the wizard when he was imprisoned at Isengard and carried him after Gandalf's fight to the death with Dorin's Bane. Gwaihir and his kin were also present at the final battle of the Black Gate as they fought the Nazgûl atop their fell beasts. Apart from being far-sighted and swift, the Eagles of Manwë were incredibly strong both in their intentions and strength. Treebeard. Finally, we have Treebeard. The ancient shepherd of trees belonged to a race known as the Ents, also known as the Onodrim or tree hosts. The Ents were created by the Valar Yavanna in order to protect the forests from destructive beings like the orcs and men. After the Ents tragically lost their Ent wives, they resorted to living in Fangorn Forest, where Treebeard reminisced about a time on Middle-earth when the elves spent their time conversing with the trees. When the Istari arrived on the continent, Saruman and Treebeard would talk about countless things before the wizard's mind turned to metal and wheels, and his care for growing things would rot away. During the War of the Ring, Treebeard protected Merry and Pippin from being gutted by an orc. The Ents had remained neutral during the War of the Ring until they saw how far Isengard had killed the forest. This was the moment the Ents went to war and unleashed their wrath upon the engines and explosive fires of the orcs. Marvellous verdict. Which among these beings do you believe to be the strongest? Tolkien conceptualized each character in such a way that they hold different strengths in the face of adversity. As may be, the intricacies of each character's moral compass never fails to leave us in awe. In his unforgettable tales of myth and song, the battle of good versus evil remained constant, whether it was within one's mind, fighting temptation with goodwill, or a primordial push and pull between the light and darkness. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks everyone.